Welcome to Live on Purpose Radio with Dr. Paul Jenkins, where you will hear inspiring stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Feed your mind with a regular dose of positive energy and show up for your life every day on purpose. Living on purpose means that you have a purpose and you do it intentionally. And now, here's your host, Dr. Paul. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Live on Purpose Radio. This is Dr. Paul, the shrink who expands your life, bringing you another episode of Live on Purpose Radio. And I'm excited today to have in my studio with me Mr. Rich Christiansen. Say hello, Rich.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here. I heard you speak a couple of weeks ago, and you really caught my attention with a few things that we'll talk about on our show today. Folks, Rich is the author of a book called Bootstrap Business, and this is a guide to business survival, basically, and so many people out there who are just doing their darndest to make it and to be successful in their business. And Rich, you've had an opportunity to do a lot of coaching and mentoring of these business owners. You've got a new book coming out, though. I'm really excited about that one. And we'll be plugging that a little bit through the show, but that's called the Zig Zag Principal.
That it is.
And that's coming out soon, hopefully.
October the 4th.
Oh, can't wait.
That's the date that McGraw-Hill's given us this week, at least.
That's the current date that you're looking toward. And that's excellent. And I don't know when you folks are listening to this podcast, but October 4th, 2011 will be a significant day in this world.
Well, it's definitely content that needs to get out there, and we're so excited. It's the best that I have to offer. I appreciated you calling yourself a shrink that's helping, and I call myself a perfectly good nerd that went bad. Indeed, the concepts that I share, I've learned the hard way. I've now founded or co-founded 32 businesses, 11 ugly failures, but 11 multi-million-dollar successes. And these are indeed the concepts that I've used not only in business, but in my personal life, that have made all the difference in the world.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I want you to share just a little bit about yourself and your experience. You say that you've founded 32 businesses?
I have now founded or co-founded 32 businesses. I actually started the first
How old are you?
Well, you know what?
You don't have
the best introduction that I've ever had is I was pulled on the stage and the individual said, "This is Rich Christiansen. He has been in more knife fights and had more battle scars than anyone I've ever met. He has the body of a 120-year-old man." I don't know. I felt good about the body part, but the reality is I've been around the block a few times and I have the battle scars to show for it. And with any time you have successes, you're also going to have failures. The trick is to not let yourself die in the process and to try to fail efficiently.
Wow. This is a concept that comes up again and again, especially as I visit with entrepreneurs or with those who coach business owners. In fact, I'm reading a book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. Mm-hmm. And it's this concept of taking your failures and doing something productive with those. Yeah. So you said ugly failures, but I've heard you talk in very glowing terms about
Oh, no. I'm very proud of my failures.
These experiences.
Yeah, indeed. I'm very proud of my failures. I think that's where the really learning does take place. However, I think a lot of times in life and also in business, we get in the mindset that we just have to, take everything, run down to Vegas, put it on black, spin the wheel, and hope it turns out okay. Mm-hmm. And I definitely don't subscribe to that methodology. I think the thing that I've learned as I've maturated in my life is simply the concept of bounding the risks, not risking what you're not willing to lose, and then failing efficiently. I still fell. I just fell far more efficiently than I did when I was a younger man.
How does one do that, Rich? How does one fail efficiently?
Here's your first plug for Zig Zag Principal. I think that the concepts in Zig Zag Principal is how you fail efficiently. Namely, you bound right up front. When I go into an endeavor now, it doesn't matter how cool, how amazing, how sexy it is. I say, I will put this much money towards it. I will put this much time towards it. This is the intellectual and relationship capital that I'll put towards it. And then ready, set, go. Go with everything I have in me For that period of time, typically it's 3 months. If I don't hit the target in 3 months, I go back, I wipe the dust off of me, I shed a few tears, and then I shake it off, and I say, okay, I failed on that one, and up on the notch board, that goes that failure.
And what's next?
After a little bit of lamenting, it's okay to go through the negative emotion and feel it and wear it. People oftentimes say, so it gets easier to fail? No, it doesn't.
It still hurts.
Oh, it still does. And I kid you not, there's still a tear shed typically. I'm not an individual that likes to lose very much. Mm-hmm. And so, indeed, you still go through the emotion and allow yourself a regroup period of time. And then the confidence, faith, hope, and belief restores, and back into battle you go.
If there were no chance of losing, there would be no meaning to winning.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
No, I think that's really true. It's what makes it fun and where the real learning actually takes place. Mm-hmm. I see so many people that are so frozen and so gridlocked with the concept and thought of failure. Mm-hmm. And, an amazing thing, I actually spent the first half of my career in the corporate world. I was a perfectly good corporate executive, went bad, and I remember those first few steps into the frigid, cold waters of entrepreneurship. I thought I was going to die, literally. Mm-hmm. But what I've learned is once you get acclimated and comfortable to being accountable and looking at the market forces eyeball to eyeball, it's not nearly as bad as you think it may be. So many people get froze up on this concept of, what if I fail? Well, okay, so you make an idiot of yourself in front of your associates, and a couple of people call you stupid, and you know what? If you're competent, if you're truly competent, it doesn't really matter because it'll correct itself and you'll show you're competent sooner or later. So just sticking with it is 9/10 of the game, in my opinion.
And playing the game.
Being willing to play the game.
Get out there and play. I love this. It was in a gym. I think I was coaching a junior jazz team or something at the time. There was this sign up in the gym. It was a quote from Wayne Gretzky, and maybe you've heard it. It says, you will miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
And if you're playing the game, you're going to miss some shots.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Let's get out there. Let's play it. So Zig Zag. Let's talk about that for a minute. You had an experience. You shared this with us at the conference a few weeks ago. On a mountain, a fairly large mountain, as I recall. Can you tell us a little bit of the background of what zigzag means, what that principle is, and then we'll talk about some of the elements of it.
You bet. Well, zigzagging is actually how we live our life. We oftentimes think we're going directly for our goal. And I ask the question, how did you drive here today? Did you drive directly here? No, you did not. If you
wouldn't be safe?
No, if you had driven directly to work or to school, then you would have hit the neighbor's dog, you would have ran a stoplight, you would have ditched your car into the lake. You would have most certainly not arrived. The reality is you came to your destination indirectly.
There is no straight course here.
The reality is there's no straight course in life. And that really troubled me when that epiphany first came to me. It really troubled me because I'm very goal-oriented. I'm very focused on getting my objective. The very few people that I know that have gone directly for their goals in life have actually ended up failing and oftentimes alienated those around them. This past winter, I took my 14-year-old son skiing, and we inadvertently got off on a black diamond run. And as he looked down the face of the mountain, he said, "Dad, I'm going to die." And I commented, "No, son, all you have to do is just point to the other side of point your snowboard in this case to the other side of the mountain and just go down. And then when you get there, stop and then just flip it around and go back down." And sure enough, he got to the bottom of the mountain very successfully by zigzagging. What would have happened if this 14-year-old son would have says, "Okay, here I go. I'm going."
Straight down.
Point that tip straight down. He may have made it. I'd argue he likely wouldn't have made it. He likely would have crashed and broke his neck. And yet we're surprised in business when 9 out of 10 small businesses fail. I got my MBA. I know what they teach. Do your business plan. Do your pro forma model. Put your crazy big hairy goal out there and run at it like there's no tomorrow. And the result is devastating. We get 4 categories of individuals. Number 1 is those I called the talkers. I used to be very critical about the talkers. Those are the people that have had a business idea for 10 years, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk, and they plan, and they talk, and they never do anything. Mm-hmm. Why do they not do anything? Because of group number 2. Those are the people that set the goal. They race directly towards it. They get halfway there. They run out of resources, and they die.
Crash and burn.
Crash and burn. Exactly like that skier would do, pointing their tips straight down the mountain. The third group is equally as disturbing, and I've fallen into this category several times. That is set the big crazy hairy goal, run at it, get there, only to realize that the market has completely moved and your goal is no longer there to be had. Mm-hmm. Then there's the rare few that actually do hit the goal and target. And so I think that the concept of charging directly to our goals is as insane as the concept of driving directly to work. It's as insane as my son pointing his tip straight down the mountain and thinking he's going to succeed. The reality is nature was built with awkward characteristics. It ebbs and flows, avoiding the big awkward obstacles. I think the story you were actually looking for was my story in the Himalayas. When I took my family this past year, the last book I wrote, Bootstrap Business, I built a little test business named Castle Wave and followed all the principles to prove it out. And 2 years, 3 months, and 9 days after creating the business, we proved the principle from cradle to grave and sold the company to a little publicly traded company. Uh-huh. So I took my family for a little sabbatical this last summer into Asia, most specifically into Nepal, into the Himalayas, and was very thoughtful as I took my children, my youngest son at the time being 7, and my next son only being 10, into high altitude, because when you get above about 10,000 feet, your body starts actually breaking down. It develops what's called cerebral edema and pulmonary edema.
Yeah, because of the altitude.
Because of the altitude, right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we got above Namche Bazaars, we're climbing in the Everest region, I took extra care with my little men not to charge directly up the Mount Everest. I mean, think of that. Crazy. What would I do myself, let alone my children, to charge up Mount Everest? Mm-hmm. They would most certainly die, wouldn't they? I mean, is it acceptable to say, oh, one of my children made it this trip, one of them lived, the other 4? I mean, we laugh, don't we? So this entire trip, I'm thinking, what do I do to protect my children? What do I do to make it safe? What do I do to make sure that they acclimate so we all succeed? And what I discovered is I was very consciously and cognitively thinking about these business principles of zigzagging, of how applicable it was also to life. The reality is this. I spent 9 days out of 10 moving away from our goal. 9 days out of 10, we were actually
different direction.
Different direction. We weren't hiking anywhere near Everest. It wasn't until 3+ weeks in, after many respites, many stops, eating potatoes with the Sherpas and playing cards and hiking over the Tengbeche Monastery, taking a day to hang out with a lama. Not until 3 weeks later did we actually have the opportunity with my 7-year-old and my 10-year-old and my beautiful family to stand high in the Himalayas and look back at the backward face of Nuptse and Lhotse. And even at that point, I didn't take my younger men further. I left them at about 17,000 feet, and then I took my older sons, who were prepared to acclimate, and we made a push up and were able to have a beautiful view of Everest and looking down on base camp and share a special moment. But the point being is I did not go directly for my goal. I was wise, cautious, deliberate, and actually enjoyed and savored many things beyond just the success of viewing Mount Everest. That was just kind of the punctuation point. The real capsulation of the trip, if you were to talk to my family and children, was all of the bonding and the tender private moments that went along with experience in addition to that little kind of capstone.
Yeah, all the stuff that happens on the way.
All the stuff on the way.
And the thing, and here's the main gem that I get from that, Rich. There's this goal, this beacon in the fog, I think is what you called it. It's what you're ultimately headed for.
Yeah.
But you're going to find yourself going all kinds of different directions on the way. And that's not just okay, it's essential.
Here's the primary reason I now zigzag. I'm a bootstrapper. Just like I was on that mountain in my business life, I succeed when I zigzag. I succeed when I follow this prescribed methodology that I've come up with, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment or two. I succeed dramatically more when I don't go directly for my goal. Now, I still have that big, hairy, crazy goal out there. Absolutely, I don't relinquish that. That's my beacon in the fog that draws me back, that inspires me, that encourages me, that motivates me, and leads me forward.
And that's always there to give you the direction and to remind you about what it is you're going to in the first place.
That's exactly right.
But then you get to spend all this time on the way, enjoying it while you do, but taking intentional steps to zigzag your way up that mountain.
And succeed along the way more with higher probability.
Perfect. We'll be right back.
And when you pray for strength to help you carry on when the troubles come your way.
Thank you for joining me for the Live on Purpose radio podcast. It is truly an honor to be a part of your prosperity team. Please visit the website, drpaul.org, where you will be able to sign up for Empower, a quick, inspiring message that will be sent right to your inbox several times a month. Click on the blog link to share your comments and be part of the discussion. You can also pick up powerful information products and stay in touch with upcoming events, all to assist you in creating and living a life that you love. Share Live on Purpose Radio with someone in your life today, and thanks for listening.
I've got a great idea.
This is Shay Larson, IdeaOrbit.com, with the World of Ideas Report. When was the last time you visited a museum, a club, or a theme park and had to get your hand stamped? Have you ever looked down at the stamp and had dollar signs pop in your head? That is exactly what happened to Mike Brown, a 22-year-old from Costa Mesa. He launched a company called Handvertising USA, where X truly marks the spot. His company allows corporations to get their logos onto the rubber stamps used by venues and clubs around the world. Clients spend the whole day or at least a few hours at the venue and will look at the stamp right on their own skin many times. They even have to spend 30 seconds looking at it just to wash it off. It is pretty hard for companies these days to get good advertising impressions, let alone get stamped right on their audiences. Handvertising has gone global, and Mike Brown discovered his first $1 million idea. The next time you get a stamp on your hand, know that good ideas are just one thought away. This is Shay Larson, IdeaOrbit.com, with the World of Ideas Report.
I've got a great idea. Wouldn't you like to know? You probably can't bear it, so I guess I'll have to share it. I thought of it a moment.
To be what we are and to become what we are capable of becoming is the only end of life. Robert Louis Stevenson.
And when you dream big, as big as the ocean. 'Cause when you dream it might come.
Okay, Rich, so you've had an opportunity to create a whole bunch of businesses, and some of them were amazing learning experiences, and some of them succeeded financially. And You've learned stuff from all of those things.
Yep. And some didn't.
And
many of them didn't.
Some of them were just kind of washes, weren't they?
Ugly failures. And, those are the hard ones. The washes are the hard ones because you don't know whether to keep on keeping on or you cut its throat. Those are the hard ones, quite
You
frankly.
said something in the conference about shoot the dogs and milk the cows.
That's exactly right. You shoot for stars, you milk cows, and you kill dogs.
There you go.
The difficulty is distinguishing between the three.
And apologies to all of you dog lovers out there.
I love dogs, but not those kind of dogs.
Yeah, well, the analogy. Well, okay, so in this Zig Zag Principal, you talked a little bit first, and in your book, you go over, I think, 10 different zigzags. If you picture yourself going up this mountain, and at the top of the mountain is your goal, and you're going to do all these switchbacks and zigzags as you get up there.
Yeah.
And you illustrate 10 of those, and the first 4 are firm foundations.
That's correct. And this has come to me as I've maturated in my career, but you can indeed zigzag. You can follow the concepts of zigzagging in your business and your personal life, but oftentimes it's not as durable. So the businesses I'm attempting to create now are far more durable, and I call that the firm foundation segment of the book. That is things like assessing your resources. What resources do you have at your disposal? What assets do you have? And oftentimes that's not just money. As a matter of fact, most of the time it's not. It's intellectual capital plus relationship capital always equals financial capital. So assessing what resources you have. The second component of firm foundation is then setting your crazy big hairy goal, something that inspires, something that motivates, something that draws you towards it that is crazy big and hard.
This is the main reason why you'd even start a business in the first place.
This is why you would do it. And this typically isn't financially motivated. My present firm big goal is to help educate 1,000 young women in third world countries. That's crazy big hairy goal that's way out there that draws me to it. The third component of the firm foundation is actually the catalyzing statement. I call it the emotional fuel. Yeah. It's the resources or the words that you wrap around your goal to get others to want to join you in your journey. It's the emotional fuel that hypercharges people to want to come align with you.
And can I comment about this too? Because this goes back to your first step too, which was to assess your resources. And you said something about relationship capital.
You bet.
It's not about having enough money to do this.
Very, very seldom is it. How do you do it with $5,000? That's what I typically start my businesses with $5,000. The $5,000 is the most meaningless part of the equation. It just as well be $1 or $50,000. What matters most is getting smart, intellectual capital, getting smart, being intellectual, being competent at something, then plus using that to serve other individuals. So relationships is where you actually make your money. If you marry smarts plus relationship, it always in the form of business yields money, financial capital. Most people get that equation, get that all backwards.
They think if they have money, then the people will come. And that's just not true.
Get smart, serve other people, money will follow.
Beautiful. And then as you talk about this emotional fuel piece, somehow you get passionate enough about your idea that you inspire other people and you enroll them into your cause.
And you can even get inspired and motivated, but if you don't get the right words, then you've totally missed the boat. The example I like to use is John F. Kennedy had the goal to have the top space program in the world. That's not very exciting, is it? But then one day he stood before Congress and he made the statement, "We will put a man on the moon and return him to Earth safely before the end of the century." Now that was a catalyzing statement. That was the emotional fuel that hypercharged his goal, and everyone joined, rallied, and indeed we were able to accomplish that goal. So the catalyzing statement is actually the third part of the firm foundation. The fourth is the values, the value structure and system. And most of the time, this isn't about what you'll do. It's about the people you will not allow into your life. It's the no's that you give that make you successful far more than the yeses that you give.
And to do that, you have to be very clear about what your values are.
What your values are and what your goal is.
And what your goal is.
You bet.
And then it will be clear to see who's not aligned with that.
You bet.
So you can say no at the right time.
Sitting in the room with us here is my value gatekeeper, Coral Reed. it's pretty tough to get past Coral Reed. She kept someone out today that was very insistent to get to me, and that's a vital role that she plays. She is the value gatekeeper that keeps the distractions and the no's out of my life.
She can put that filter in so
You
that
bet.
you can stay focused on
You bet.
your big, hairy goal
There you go.
and your values.
So that's the firm foundation portion. The zigzag portion is really pretty simple. There's 3 zigs and zags that I found that work beautifully. It's kind of like a cake. If you put the water in before, or maybe it's the flour and sugar before the butter. I don't know.
You're not a pastry
I'm not
chef,
a baker,
are you?
but what I do know, if you get that
the
order messed
matters.
up, you're in trouble.
Exactly.
So very simply, how I drive to zigzag zig now is number 1, drive to profitability. Do whatever it takes in the early stages to get your business to profitability, even if it appears as a detour. I often say in the early stages, I'll go dance in the freeway in a tutu if that's what it takes to get to profitability. Now, I won't do it naked because of my value system, but I will dance in a tutu to get to profitability. You see, once I'm operating in the black, it feels so much different, and my options are so much greater than when I'm just burning cash, chasing towards something that I likely won't ever hit.
Especially if it's not your cash.
Especially, oh boy, and that's the most painful part is actually working off someone else's when you're tied down to it. That can be very brutal.
So becoming profitable creates some freedom for you so that you can move forward with the next zig.
That's exactly right. And you bound it. And if you don't get to that first zig in the allocated time, we'll talk about that in a second. That's the guardrails part. Number 1 step, always drive to profitability. Number 2 zag is always add resources and add processes. So once you've figured out what you've done, you add other people doing the same process, and then you define really structured processes and conditions how to follow it. The third step is always a scale element. How do I make something happen here so that I'm not having to do everything myself? The book The E-Myth is a great book that talks about getting out of being a technician. The difficulty, it didn't tell you how to do it. This is how this is indeed how you do it. Your podcast program here is a great example of scale. You're able to conduct an interview and share this with thousands of people in a scale fashion.
And I don't have to go out to each of those thousands of people and say, hey, listen to this.
That's exactly right.
They can access it while I'm sleeping.
That's exactly right. And that is such a joyful part of business when you actually get so that you're making money when you're sleeping or when you're showering or when you're brushing your teeth. That's, for me, when the real fun starts in business. Those first 2 phases, I hate it. It's brutal. I mean, you're talking to an entrepreneur guy here, and it's brutally hard, difficult period of time.
Well, and I'm looking at my own business, and I think you commented something about how attorneys and doctors and professionals kind of have a hard time with the scale thing.
Yeah.
Because we build our businesses around ourselves.
That's right.
And replicating that,
kind of tough.
Kind of an interesting process.
I actually, in Bootstrap Business, wrote a chapter titled, I Never Want to Be a Doctor or a Lawyer. And it isn't because I don't respect and have great love and admiration. It's just the fact that if a doctor is not snapping on a rubber glove and poking it somewhere tender, or an attorney doing it verbally, they're not making money. And I like businesses that grow beyond that. And there's great examples of doctors and lawyers and professionals actually figuring models out to scale, but oftentimes they get trapped in that phase 1, and they're never able to progress to their big, crazy, hairy goal. So I think that's actually another powerful thing of the Zig Zag Principal, is it helps unjam you and realize you by actually diverting, I can get around this big boulder, this big obstacle that's keeping me from fulfilling my real soul purpose long term.
Keeping that in mind all the time, but realizing you have to take a little detour every so often.
You bet.
And that'll actually help you to get there. And
giving yourself permission to take that detour.
So those are very practical zigs and zags that you're talking about.
You bet.
You mentioned guardrails. I've driven on mountain roads before. You don't want to go crashing off of a 100,000-foot cliff.
Well, just like my son skiing, I mean, picture how ugly it would have been if he would have kept skiing into the trees. He probably would have broke his neck there also. So in the process, you do have to put guardrails. Many people say, what does a guardrail look like? Well, my guardrails look like I will give myself 3 months to do this endeavor. I will not spend more than X amount of dollars doing it. I won't contact more than these 5 people to get the concept initially founded. I'll allocate only 65% of my resource to this endeavor. So it's putting firm boundaries and then saying, hey, once I hit that, having my out of bounds network pull me back and say, hey, you're out of bounds.
Mm-hmm. That's what Coral's here for.
One of my purposes.
One of your team members. Well, this is great because I think this takes some of the fear out of it too, because if you fear that you're going to go in and lose everything, why on earth would you take that kind of a risk?
That's exactly right. And you couple that with the abyss. The reason so many people, when you say zigzagging, that sounds indirect. That doesn't sound very much like I'm going to get to my goal. And the fear is rather than ever get back directionally sound, you end up way off in the weeds out in Niverville, and you've wasted your entire life. Those guardrails protect you both time, monetary-wise, resource-wise, and mental-wise, that, hey, for 3 months, I'll do very miserable things.
And let's see what happens.
We went through a season of it here, proving the book out. I'm big into not just talking about it, but proving it. So we created another company and lived the Zig Zag Principal. The company's name is Frog Hair. And we went through 3 months of torture, misery, in my estimation, but willing to do it, knowing that it was just a season, and we'd shift behavior and move and progress. And indeed, we're now into our 9th, 10th month, and life is very happy and good, but we allowed ourselves permission to be miserable for the first 3 months, hitting that profitable zig or zag. But it was far better than sitting back and just thinking and talking about it. And even far better than that is running directly at something and then dying along the path.
Psychologically, this creates some new possibilities too, because if you've got guardrails in, then you're willing to commit. You're willing to actually do what's required during that time. Those 3 months are going to be much more productive than if you didn't have some end point in mind.
And I structure everything on 3-month increments. For 3 months, you can do about anything. For 3 months, you can really get after it in a very meaningful kind of way, particularly if you have another term here is a Pavel salivating dog, a big chunk of meat out there. So I always, in the 3-month increment, put a big, hairy, crazy reward. Our office just got iPads last month. You don't think they weren't motivated to chase those iPads? Just like a dog panting after that meat,
Exactly.
And so we knowingly and consciously will provide these big, crazy rewards to motivate us to get to these zigs and zags, hidden treasures.
Yeah. Well, I think we've put together some of these concepts in a nice way. You've started, and maybe we get to finish with, be careful about what you're willing to risk.
Yeah.
Can you address that for just a minute?
Yeah, I think so many people think that the ultimate is entrepreneurship and that winning and having a great financial gain is the end game. And indeed, it's really good, but don't risk what you're not willing to lose. I'm a firm believer that the most important things are not to drive a BMW or fly in a Learjet or have millions of dollars. The most important things are friends, trust relationships, and those critical. Your health is another one, but to have and maintain those is the real wins in life. It's the lifestyle. It's the reason that we were put here. And don't risk your most important relationships to get to success.
So some things you just can't replace.
Some things you should never want to replace.
Your health, your trusting relationships, your family.
Those have got to take precedence over everything. There's some people that I say, please don't do entrepreneurship right now. Don't start your own business. It will put that key relationship in jeopardy, and that's okay.
And it doesn't mean they can't get to that at some point, because this might be a zig.
Absolutely. And I think giving yourself permission to be okay where you're at, and then figure a way to wiggle out of it, that is the most natural way to get to your end goal. That's really what zigzagging is all about.
Well, Rich, I want to make sure that people have a way to get in touch with you. Probably the best way is through your website.
That's correct. We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. If you Facebook Rich Christiansen or Twitter Rich Christiansen, but the best way is the website, which is zigzagprincipal.com.
And that's, okay, so zigzagprincipal.com, and that's Rich Christiansen. I think I called you Christiansen. Or
Yeah, it's spelled Christiansen.
Because it's spelled that way. Well, there you go. That'll help people remember.
There you go.
Christiansen.
That's correct.
Rich Christiansen. And it's zigzagprincipal.com.
That's correct.
And the book is coming out a little later in
It's coming out
2011.
in October, and would make one
Perfect.
special invitation to everyone. If you, we're having what's called a Zigzagging Moms, Zigzagging Teens, Zigzagging Kids event as our launch party, where anyone that pre-orders 5 books, I'm going to allow them to come to this really high-end event where we're going to all kick it off and teach the Zigzag Principle, but then we're going to allow my zigzagging stay-at-home moms that are applying this principle, my zigzagging teenagers, which have a crazy successful business, and kids team teach the principles, engage in activities, and have a blowout day. That's going to be the 16th and 17th of October.
Perfect. And that's on the website.
That will be on the website.
Okay, folks, zigzagprincipal.com. Thank you, Rich Christiansen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Everybody go out there and live on purpose.